We have an exciting announcement.
We do.
We have a book club live that corresponds with your new book, The Anxiety Audit.
It's really the book that I wrote to help parents and young adults and teenagers too begin to identify their anxiety patterns. And we have this course that walks you through each of the patterns. And then there's going to be a live Q&A in which we're going to go over reader questions.
There's over 3 hours of recorded video content where Lynn and I go over each chapter, highlighting a different anxiety pattern.
All 7.
A friend already took the course, and she said that if everyone read the book and took this course every 6 months, that the aha moments would just be life-changing, and that we weren't charging enough.
Something that is very clear to me is that learning is a process that takes repetition.
Because this material is life-changing, but it is dense. If it only took Lynn saying this stuff one time, no one in our greater family would have any anxiety issues at all. And that's just not how it happens, because we're all works in progress.
It's just not possible to hear this information one time and have it all figured out.
So go to Flusterclux.com and check on the courses button where you can go ahead and sign up and register for the Anxiety Audit Book Club. We hope you join us.
Robin, I love Hiya vitamins. I'll tell you, they are a great vitamin for kids. I don't have little kids anymore, but my husband and I feel like little kids when our Hiya vitamins arrive. We take them. We each have our own little bottle. This is a great product. It really has just become part of our normal routine.
I think we should explain why you love Hiya vitamins so much. Because typical kids' vitamins are basically candy in disguise. So that's why Hiya was created. It's the pediatrician-approved, super-powered chewable vitamin.
It's non-GMO, it's vegan, it's dairy-free, it's gelatin-free, it's nut-free. It's designed for kids of all ages, including my husband and I. It is sent straight to our door, so we have one less thing to worry about.
So they're formulated with a blend of 12 organic fruits and vegetables, and then they're supercharged with 15 essential vitamins and minerals, including D, B12, C, zinc, folate, to help support immunity, energy, brain function for those growing kids and those aging kids.
Yes, how about that? You can receive 50% off your first order. This deal is not available on their regular website.
Go to hiyahealth.com. That's HIYA. HEALTH.com/fluster and get your kids or yourselves the full body nourishment they need to grow into healthy adults. Lynn, it's Memorial Day weekend, so we are kicking off summer now, aren't we?
We are officially kicking off summer.
That means it's time to recast one of our most important episodes to have a really good summer, which is all about summer camp and separation anxiety.
And the thing about this episode is that if you talk to people who work at camps, who go to camps, who send their kids off to camp, if you talk to kids who went to camp, if you talk to college students who loved camp, it really is a metaphor for stepping into new things, developing autonomy. It is a great experience for kids to be able to manage things separate from their parents, and for parents to recognize that it's not about creating certainty and comfort and making sure that everything goes as planned. It is an opportunity for a lot of skill development, all the things that I talk about in so many of the episodes.
Yeah, even if you don't have a kid going off to camp, you'll hear this episode about both the patterns that show up for parents and the patterns that might show up for your kids when you all venture into new territory with new things.
Yeah, and maybe it's not overnight camp that you're sending your children off to, but maybe they're going to summer programs, maybe they're going to day camps, maybe you're going on a vacation in a new place. It's all relevant.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Welcome to Flusterclux with Lynn Lyons, where we talk about how to manage those tricky emotions that show up in all families. Serious stuff without being too serious. I'm your co-host, Robin, and I'm Lynn's sister-in-law, and I'm here to ask your questions.
And I'm Lynn Lyons. I'm an anxiety expert, speaker, mom, and author, and I've been a therapist for over 30 years. Parenting can be a flusterclux, and I'm here to help you find your way. And I'll even tell you what to do and what to say. If you're sending your child away to camp for the first time, one of the things that I have seen, and I think you've seen it too, Robin, is this make sure they know exactly what it's going to be like, go over the schedule, go over the activities, show them what the town looks like where their camp is going to be. If you can go ahead of time, introduce them to all the counselors. That's doing the disorder.
I'm going to stop you there because, of course, the regular listeners know what that means. Doing the disorder is what you say because you're feeding. In a short term, it feels good and correct that you're giving anxiety exactly what it wants, which is control of the information and control of the certainty of everything. So a parent can quickly say, I'm going to give you all of that uncertainty and I'm going to give you that information so that there's nothing to worry about.
Right.
But on a meta level, what we're trying to always do is teach our kids to adapt to the uncertain.
Right. So when I say don't do the disorder, that's exactly right. I'm saying don't fall for anxiety's tricks by thinking that you can get ahead of this thing or you can solve this thing or get rid of this thing by giving your child or yourself, which we'll get to in a moment, as much information as possible. Because that doesn't work. The skill that we're teaching is the ability to tolerate not knowing everything. And camp is a wonderful opportunity for kids to step into that. If you as a parent say, okay, I have to make sure my kid knows everything about camp, or I have to make sure I know everything about my kid at camp, then the anxiety is like, woohoo, thanks for helping me out.
Right. Anxiety's giving you a thumbs up and a high five. And that is not what we want.
Exactly. So when you're talking to kids about camp, here's a great time to say, well, here's what we know about camp. And here are all these things that we don't know yet. And there's so many things that you will discover along the way. Always want to give the message to kids that you learn as you go and you learn through experience. And sometimes you learn what works. Sometimes you learn what doesn't work. But that's part of the whole camp experience is to step into this environment, which is usually different than your normal environment. Not many people live in a cabin by the lake. And you step into this situation and you learn new things and you experience new things and you have new adventures and you make new relationships. If your goal as a parent is to take away all of that discovery and all of that exploration and even some of that struggle, then you're removing what I think is a really important part of camp. A huge part of camp.
Yeah, as you're saying that, I could just hear a parent even saying, you're asking a lot of great questions that you won't really know till you're there. And I can't wait to read the letters you send me where you can tell me what you discover.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things you can do, so if you have a worried child going off to camp for the first time or is nervous about going, if you're worried, then one of the things you can do is you can make those kinds of questions a part of your communication with them. So when you write that first letter, you say, I can't wait for you to list 3 things that you've done that you've never done before. So that you're prompting them, you're talking about it in a very positive way. You're talking about this discovery in a positive way rather than setting it up in that negative way of like, oh, I hope you can figure everything out. Or, let's make sure we know exactly what's going to happen before you go. So your language and your approach to this is one of openness and discovery and really rolling around. I always say rolling around in the mights and maybes of life. So you can even say, we're going to roll around in the mights and maybes of camp. And really normalizing it and making it something interesting rather than something to be avoided and eliminated.
May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and Talkspace, the leading virtual therapy provider, celebrates every effort you make to improve how you feel and how you live. If you've been working on your mental health, or if you want to make progress towards a mentally healthier place, Talkspace is here for you.
So obviously, I'm a big supporter of therapy. Whatever issue you're dealing with, it is something that everybody can benefit from. It is easy to get started with Talkspace. It's convenient to meet online. Wherever you're comfortable, it will make a difference in your life.
There's no need to commute to appointments, miss time at work, or line up childcare in order to attend sessions. It's mental health care made easy.
It's secure. They use the latest end-to-end bank-grade encryption technology to store client information and comply with the latest HIPAA regulations.
Talkspace is also in-network with most major insurers.
To celebrate every step you take toward a better, richer, fuller life, Talkspace is offering every listener of this podcast $100 off your first month with Talkspace. So just go to Talkspace.com/fluster to match with a licensed therapist today.
Go to Talkspace.com/fluster to get $100 off your first month. That's Talkspace.com/fluster. Lynn, tell us about this new sponsor we have called No CD.
So I am thrilled that we have No CD as a sponsor. One of the things that I talk about all the time is how important that it is to get qualified help, skilled, specialized help for people who have OCD. And this is an online platform. You get online sessions with an ERP trained therapist.
And tell us about ERP.
So ERP stands for Exposure and Response Prevention Therapy. ERP, Exposure and Response Prevention. This is the gold standard for treating OCD. You've heard me talk about it a lot on the podcast. It's often misdiagnosed. People don't understand it. And I will tell you that in my experience, talking with a lot of people, with schools, with clinicians, if you have OCD, and it's not treated by somebody who knows OCD, the problem gets worse. So having a specialized place where people can go and get access to treatment is fantastic.
I love that there's a community peer group in the No CD app. So getting started is easy. Go to treatmyocd.com to book your free call. Lynn, I'm so happy Earth Breeze is a sponsor of our show because I simply love this game-changing product.
I love it too. And, you know, it makes perfect sense because why does laundry detergent come in these massive plastic jugs? They're heavy to carry. They're not very environmentally sound at all. And instead, you get these really great small sheets from Earth Breeze that you pop into the washer. No mess, no goo, so simple.
Yeah, they're just slightly bigger than an index card.
They look like dryer sheets, but they're not. They dissolve 100% in any wash cycle, hot or cold. You just toss them in.
Yeah, Earth Breeze has really made the concept of detergent better. The packaging is compact, it's biodegradable, and it's plastic-free, and the sheets are vegan and cruelty-free.
We love Earth Breeze, and they're so sure that you're going to love it too. If you don't like it, Earth Breeze will give you a full refund. You don't even have to send it back. They are that confident that you'll love it as much as Robin does, as much as I do.
Now's the time to try Earth Breeze because right now, our listeners can subscribe and save 40% off. Go to earthbreeze.com/flusterclux to get started.
That's earthbreeze.com/flusterclux for 40% off. earthbreeze.com/flusterclux.
Okay, let's get back to this conversation. What would you discourage parents to say, particularly anxious parents who are having a rougher time with this transition?
So the first thing you want to stay away from is offering all of those reassurances of certainty. So saying, I'm sure everything will be fine. And of course, you're going to be totally comfortable. And I know that your counselors are going to, right, all that insurance. You can do a little bit of that. You should only say it maybe once, maybe twice. We did our investigation about this camp, and we really think that it's going to be a wonderful experience for you.
Maybe reach is a better word than investigation.
Yeah. Yeah, right. We investigated this camp. We've got, we sent out a private eye into the camp, and right. Yeah, we've got people. Don't worry, there are people there.
We have a credit report coming on your counselor.
Yeah, right. We've done some significant background checks on all of the people who are employed there, and we'll be receiving those reports soon. Yeah, you're right. That's too strong a word. But just say, hey, we checked it out. And remember, and maybe you decided together that you were going to go to this camp. Remember, we checked this out. And we decided this was going to be a really cool place for you to go. And here comes, and of course your worry is going to show up because remember, worry wants to know everything. Stay away from all that reassurance. Certainly stay away from trying to collect and gather as much information ahead of time and feeding it to your kids' worry. The other thing you don't want to do is to make a pickup plan. You don't want to say, if you don't like it after a few days, we will come get you. Or if they're staying for 2 weeks, if you don't like it after a week, you don't have to stay for the second week. Because what happens with that is that kids then start to plan their escape. They're counting down the days. They're watching the clock for when they can get out of there rather than stepping into the experience and letting themselves learn and get more and more acclimated to the camp. The same thing happens when kids are going back to school after a school avoidance. A lot of times schools will put in place a pickup plan, and they'll say, if you're still anxious by lunchtime, then your mom can come pick you up, right? They will take the sure thing. They will take the escape hatch if you offer it, and it doesn't give the message to them that you're going to feel awkward and unsure at first. It's going to feel strange. It's going to feel, you might have a little bit of homesickness, whatever. And this is how you acclimate and get used to it. Because you're saying to them, there's a time limit on whether or not you can handle this, and we will cut it short if you can't figure it out. Not the message you want to give.
My daughter said that this formula is what they always talk about with first time camp, first sleepaway camp, is the first day you're in shock. The second day you're sad. The third day you're fine.
Yeah.
Right? Like that first day, there's a lot of adrenaline and all sorts of newness and excitement. That second day, you all of a sudden are without your familiar home and comforts. And then the third day, you adapt and you start making connections and seeing the benefits of being there and the fun that you're going to have.
When I do talk a lot to kids about starting middle school or starting high school, I say to them, the rule in our family is first day, totally confused about where to go. First week, you start feeling like, all right, maybe I can figure this out. First month, you feel like you've been there your whole life. And so that's the same thing, just a little shorter time zone. And there's that wonderfully suggestive language, right? So you're saying to kids, first day, exciting. Second day, homesickness. Third day, adaptability. Words have power. And when we say to kids, this is the way it goes, and this is what you should expect, it really does have an impact on them when people with some sort of knowledge or authority or trust or whatever lay it out that way in a very matter-of-fact way. The other thing, too, is that we want to normalize that it feels strange at first to be in a new place, because that's going to be an experience that they're going to have over and over and over again. I remember moving into the many new apartments or the new houses that I've moved into in my life. And it's the same thing. Like you move all your boxes in and you're like, woohoo! And then everybody leaves and your house is a mess. And then you cry and then you get used to it. And it's figuring that out, I think, is such a good thing to lay out to kids, because it's really saying that going into a new situation and adapting to a new situation takes a little bit of time, and it's not going to be perfect, and that it's okay if you have feelings about it. You're just normalizing all that stuff. I love that they say that to her. That's the kind of suggestive language that I love.
So even though, for example, my daughter was going to a camp, I knew what to expect because I had been a camper there. I was anxious. I mean, I got over it. It wasn't, but I was anxious about whether or not she would like it, whether or not it was a good fit for her. And I remember really trying to kind of keep that worry at bay. And I supplanted all of it. I kind of crashed after dropping her off at camp. And I want to talk about that too, because you have that expression, the vanilla ice cream face. Like there's a time when you, for your kid, are going to have to supplant your emotional reactions for their benefit. We had a plan to decide, is there one parent who's better at that than the other, so that you can make the drop off, especially of a first time camper, kind of all about them, as opposed to letting your own worry sort of dominate the conversation.
Yeah. And I know the experience with dropping my son off at camp. I always am appreciative of the fact that they've done this so many times before. They have plans in place. And so they don't let you linger as a parent. You go in, you meet the counselor, you help them put the bed together, and then they're like, goodbye. Right? Because the camp knows this is not their first summer having all these kids come in. And you also have to recognize that the camp knows that new kids that are going to be dropped off feel uncomfortable. So you're really, as a parent, the vanilla ice cream face, and also being able to recognize that the camp's procedures are there for a reason, and you are not to be the exception to that rule.
Can we just stop and underline that again? Because I think that that's so key. When we feel like our own needs as parents are hitting the boundaries of what their process is, we are going down a bad path of like,
Yeah.
no, but my family's different.
Yeah.
And the camps have heard it all before. And they know why they do what they do.
Right. What the child picks up on is the parent saying, well, you don't understand how difficult this is for my child. So all these other kids may be able to be dropped off, but my child is, fill in the blank, more emotional, more fragile, has more difficulty socially. So it starts off with you saying, my child is different and my child needs extra care and my child needs to have an exception to the rules. Not the way you want camp drop-off to go.
Interestingly, a friend of mine is sending off a daughter to camp for the first time. Her daughter has a lot of sleep issues. I know about these sleep issues. And I said, how do you think these sleep issues are going to go at sleepaway camp? And, we laughed about it. They were like, they might charge you twice next summer. It might be a lot of work or it might not. And as I hear what you say, I said, does the camp know that she may have a hard time falling asleep at night? And she's like, I sent them 2 pages to give them this. But as you say this, I realize it's a fresh start where maybe the past and the history don't have to come to. I don't know. Like, what do you say about that? Because you've definitely had clients who are anxious go off to sleepaway camp.
For kids that are anxious falling asleep, that's the reason they don't go to sleepaway camp. Because they're worried that they can't go to sleep. It's the word sleep that really throws them. So one of the things, and I've had plenty of kids going off to sleepaway camp who have had this issue. So again, I use suggestive language and I say to them, it is really fine if you don't sleep very well for the first few nights. And the parents will go, oh, but then she'll be exhausted. And I know when she doesn't get enough sleep, then she's so cranky. And what if she's trying to make new friends and she hasn't gotten sleep? And I'm like, no. Look, here's what we're going to, and I sometimes talk to parents about this ahead of time. We're going to predict that she has trouble falling asleep. We're going to predict that for the first few days, you might not sleep very well. For the first few days, you might not be able to fall asleep when everybody else is asleep. And the counselors that are there, they've dealt with this issue a lot, so they know how to handle it. But here's what I do know what will happen is that you're going to get more and more tired because you're going to be doing more and more exciting things during the day. And it might be really interesting to see how your sleep changes when you're at sleepaway camp in this new environment. It might be really interesting to see what happens. So just kind of being an observer of it. But oh my gosh, I think for the first few nights, you might expect that it'll be, a little difficult to fall asleep, and that's perfectly fine. I predict that. It's the same thing that I do when kids are having a hard time sleeping away from home in period, and they go to their first sleepover at a friend's house. I say, you're going to have a wakeover. So under no circumstances are you to fall asleep. I want you to stay up all night. Don't fall asleep, no matter what. And then they laugh. They know what I'm doing. But we take away the pressure that they're supposed to fall asleep. One of the things that parents do if their child has sleep issues and they send them to sleepaway camp is they get really, really anxious that their child is not going to get enough sleep, which is one of the reasons why their child has sleep issues at home too. Sleep issues have a lot to do with being nervous and worried because you're not able to fall asleep.
Let's take a quick break and we'll talk more about that. Lynn, you don't have any tricky food allergies in your family, but do you know how expensive mayonnaise made without canola oil is? Because I'm going to tell you, if you go to the grocery store, it could easily be $11 a jar.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea.
Yeah. So Thrive Market is my go-to for all my grocery and household essentials, and the convenience of getting it all quickly shipped to my doorstep is a huge time saver and over time a big money saver.
I don't have any food allergies, but I'm picky about the foods that I bring into my house, and I'm picky about the cleaning products too. We are just not into bringing toxic chemicals into the house, and Thrive Market really is a great way to get those products consistently, conveniently. I always have them on hand.
So on top of the massive savings on each order, I love that Thrive Market also has a deals page that changes daily. It gives me cash back on so many brands, and they have a price match guarantee. So join Thrive Market today and get 30% off your first order plus a free $60 gift. Go to thrivemarket.com/Flusterclux for 30% off your first order plus a free $60 gift.
That's Thrive, THRIVE market.com/Flusterclux. Thrivemarket.com/Flusterclux. reshare.com/Flusterclux. So, Robin, Mother's Day is on the way. And, we want to give our moms the best Mother's Day gift we can. And I'll tell you, Skylight Frame might just be the best gift at Mother's Day.
Don't forget the grandmothers too.
And I think one of the things that's awesome about it is that, say, if we're talking about a grandmother, or you're talking about family members that are all over the country, everybody can put their pictures on this one frame. It has a gorgeous 10 or 15-inch touchscreen. It sets up in less than a minute. So even the least tech savvy are able to use this. Your kids are at a Little League game, you're taking pictures, you can put them in. It's a way for relatives to just constantly be updated and see these beautiful pictures.
There's no app or subscription required to send photos anytime from anywhere.
So if you really want to stay connected to your family members, if you really want to give a gift to your mom, to your grandmother, to your favorite Aunt Tootie, you get 10% off, up to $30 off your frame when you go to skylightframe.com/Flusterclux. That's right. To get 10% off, up to $30 of your purchase of a Skylight Frame, just go to skylightframe.com/Flusterclux.
That's SKYLIGHTFRAME, skylightframe.com/Flusterclux.
Okay, so now back to the show.
Lynn, you sent me that article where you were interviewed for Outside Magazine that talks about the facial recognition software and the photo ops. And it's so funny. I want to talk about this because I absolutely know your perspective on this, because you think that tracking software and other things are very counterproductive, not helpful, and really kind of going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
I just have to say that as a parent on the user end of these facial recognition software, the first summer, oh my God, I would see these photos of my daughter and my anxiety would tell stories about what she was doing, who she was hanging out with, what she liked, what she enjoyed. And I was just so sure I knew exactly what to make of those pictures.
Yeah.
And I had every single thing wrong.
Yeah.
So we didn't have those when I was a camper, but obviously as a parent, I learned okay, it is so easy to tell stories. Therefore, I now take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
I have a great time with it, but it's just a game. It's a crazy game of anxiety where you'll get a text notification that photos were uploaded and you pour through all of these photos. Again, we got to stop.
It's like a parenting ink blot test, right? It's like a Rorschach test, which is where they show you a shape and then you have to tell your story about it. You're looking at this 1 second in time, this 1 nanosecond in time, where they snap this photo of your child and then you're telling a story, you're projecting. The interesting thing about this with the facial recognition software too is the reason they came up with it is that they were trying to decrease parents' anxiety about having to look through all the photos and find their child. They felt like that was too much work or that was too anxiety producing. So we're going to make it even easier for the parents because we'll only send them the photos of their child. So once again, doing the disorder, how can we give you as much information about your child in the simplest and most direct way possible so we will leave nothing up to chance?
Well, the camps are in a terrible position because the parents are demanding this access.
Yeah.
I mean, I see exactly how this happened.
Yeah.
It's a shame that parents are putting camps in this position, and it's really no different than how over time parents have been putting colleges in a similar position too.
Right. Well, what happens is it becomes the parent as the consumer.
Yes.
And if the parent is the anxious consumer, this is what happens with colleges. It happens a lot with the schools that I work with. There's an increasing demand from the customer, which is the parent, to have more and more information about their child. So this is parent portals, all that kind of stuff that goes on. And so I think it's really an opportunity as a parent to step back and say, can I allow my child to be separate from me? Look, if you don't get pictures at camp and if you get letters, you're going to tell stories too. Without the pictures, you're going to tell stories. This is what we do as parents when our kids are away from us. We tell stories. right? So that's okay. Get used to that process. Let the stories be there and really notice what kind of stories you tell. That's a little interesting observation to make.
So the worst picture you can get is there's like a big group photo of that age group and everyone's posing and smiling and your child is not smiling.
Yeah.
And of course you see that because this is a true story.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my gosh, she hates this camp. I loved it and I feel so bad. You'll do that, especially because they're not there. You miss them. You haven't seen them.
Right.
So you just totally play that story. And it was completely off. She loved camp. It was just like a bad photo.
She just had to take a poop or something. Who knows? Or maybe she was just like lost in her own thoughts. There was a family that I know, and they have 2 boys and I have 2 boys, and they were at the same camp as my younger son too. And the older son wrote a letter to the parents, and the kids were separated by age. It was an all boys camp, and he said, I'll make up names. I saw Sam. He looks sad. Please advise. That was the letter. That was the first letter they got from their older son at camp. Yeah. I mean, it really is. It's such a challenge, isn't it? To not put those stories in there and to not project. You know, one of the things that I say is it really is interesting when you don't hear anything from your child. What's the story that you tell? Is the story that, oh my gosh, they can't even bear to write me a letter because they're so miserable and they don't want to let me know how miserable they are? Or is it, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I haven't gotten a letter yet. It means they're too busy to write. We create and we project all of these things. Let them have their experience. Let them figure things out about themselves without you feeling as if you need to project all of your stuff onto them. That's sort of one of the hardest things about parenting anyway, right? One of the things that drives kids crazy, particularly as they become teenagers, is that whenever they come to us with a problem, we tell them about our experience with the problem. They don't want to hear about our story from 1982. They want to have their own experience. So ask questions, but don't project and don't jump in so quickly. And don't call the camp. Don't call the camp, right? They will call you. Camps will call you if there is a problem. You don't need to call and check in.
So your advice to the parents who want to pick up the phone and call the camp is what?
Is to take a breath, take a walk. Right? It may be helpful if you're a really anxious parent and you're sending or even not a really anxious parent, but maybe this is just a new experience for you. And so it's going to be challenging. Maybe write yourself a little note before your child goes about maybe what are the do's and don'ts, just so that you have it handy, because in the moment, it's going to be so tempting to pick up the phone or to call or to tell a story. Think about before you send your child away to camp, think about what you want that experience to be like for your child, and think about where you need to check your worry so that you don't impose your own worry on them, because that's the meta thing, is that worried kids pick up the worry of their parents. We absolutely know that. Write yourself a little letter. I'm not going to do this. I know this is going to happen. Predict for yourself what your worry is going to say so that you feel better equipped to manage it while they're gone. They will call you. If your kid gets hurt, they call you. If your kid gets mono, they call you. My kid had both of those things happen.
Sometimes, though, things are bumpy. And maybe the camp is not the right fit for the child.
Yes.
And so what is the way to approach that? And how would you advise families to approach that without being so reactive?
If you know that you are not a super anxious parent, or you know that maybe your other kids have gone to camp, or you went to camp and you know that camp can be a really positive experience. So you're not starting this thing off with all of that trepidation and all of that anticipation and all of that what ifing. If your child goes to camp and it's really a bad fit, it really doesn't work, they don't have to go back. I've had a lot of kids where parents would say, I really just want you to go and try it and see what you think. And I want you to see what you think, and then we'll figure out whether or not this camp works for you or not. And then you can make some decisions about it. I think sometimes parents feel like every camp fits for every child, and that's just not the case. And so be a little flexible about it. Talk about it before you send your child off to camp. Talk about what kind of camp they'd like to go to, where it might be a good fit. Do you want them to go to this kind of camp or that kind of camp? But know that not every camp experience is going to work out fabulously. We want that to happen. And then you consider it an experiment that didn't work. And that's okay too.
sometimes even at a camp that is a great fit in many ways, sometimes you could just be placed with kids that aren't a good fit.
Yeah.
And if you don't feel a sense of potential connection with the kids in your bunk, for example, that's going to make the summer pretty hard. Ask the camp, what can you do to help my child make deeper connections with people in the bunks or people at the camp? Like, that's what we need to focus on. And if there are any modifications that are possible, that can make a whole difference.
Yeah, you can say, I think we have a connection problem. And is there anything you can do to help out with that? Yeah. And that is something to pay attention to, right? If somebody is really feeling alone or feeling as if they're not making friends or feeling like they're not connecting or participating in things, then there's a connection problem, and some adjustments certainly can be made for sure.
Yeah, because who you're sharing your space with matters.
Yeah. But I think then, okay, so let's not take that too far though, right? Because some parents will say, well, there's a kid in the bunk that my child doesn't like, and I need them to be removed from that cabin, and you laugh, but this is what happens in schools all the time.
Wow.
There's a child in class that is not treating my child well. And so I need to have that child removed from the class. I think the biggest advice, and I've had this in so many situations as a parent, and I've talked to so many families about this, is just slow down a little bit. Sometimes it's really helpful to just give yourself 24 hours. I told you that funny story where the kid said, please advise. Right. The next letter they got was much, much, much better. Much, much better. A lot of times the first letter that you get, you've got so much writing on that first letter that shows up. And then it shows up and it's not so great. Just slow down. Just wait a little bit. Just give your child some time to adapt before you jump in and try and fix the situation or change the situation. I think that's good advice just in general. If you're not getting along with a friend, or you're not getting along with a coach on a team, or there's a teacher that you don't like, or give your child some time to work through it before you jump in immediately and try and resolve the problem.
I'm excited for camp. I don't get to go anymore, but I still vicariously feel the anticipation of packing up and all of those things. It's really fun. But
well, you could do what one of my clients did, is that while their child was at camp, they rented a house about a half a mile away and then just sort of spied on their kid. You could do that. That would be a funny movie, wouldn't it? The kids out on the lake in the canoe and the parents are hiding in the woods with binoculars.
I bet that's happened in the history of my camp.
I'm sure it has happened.
What is that? Oh, that's just my dad's drone.
That's true. Gosh, look at that. That's interesting. That drone seems to show up at swimming lessons every day at 11:15. That's right. That doesn't seem random, does it?
Why don't you give parents a pep talk of why these camps have such incredibly positive benefits? What's the goal here?
The goal is to let your child do all of the things that they will need to do later in life in this very encouraging, quite protected environment. So think of what we want for our kids as they're moving forward. We want them to be able to step into new situations. We want them to be able to handle uncertainty. We want them to be able to make new friends. We want them to be able to get along with people that maybe it's not a great fit, but we have to tolerate them. All of these skills, if I list those skills, and if you rewind this a few seconds and listen to those skills, those are the things you do to get through your adult life. You step into situations, you handle difficult people, you make new connections, you adapt when you need to, and you let yourself have fun. You let yourself be in an environment that is different right now, too, in the world. Gosh, letting these kids be away from technology, letting them be in the water, letting them get mosquito bites, letting them stay up and make s'mores and all the other things that we think about with camp. And there's a gazillion things that happen in camp. These are all the skills that we use every day to be functional adults. And it's an opportunity for them to learn them without your constant commentary. They discover things about themselves. They have a little secret part of their lives that they don't share with you. And that's a good thing.
So if you find that you're having a hard time while your kids are at camp this summer, join the Facebook group, share a little post. I'm sure there are going to be other parents feeling the same way, and you can commiserate with each other and Lynn and me instead of calling the camp.
Yeah, don't call the camp.
So join our Facebook community so you can ask Lynn a question and connect with our listeners.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Flusterclux. Bye, Robin.
Bye, Lynn.
If you're a parent, I invite you to join us at the Mindful Mama podcast, where it's all about becoming a less irritable, more joyful parent. With sometimes hilarious and always thought-provoking experts and friends, at Mindful Mama, we know that you cannot give what you do not have. And when you have calm and peace within, then you can give it to your children. I'm Hunter Clark Fields, and I can't wait to see you there. Listen in to the Mindful Mama podcast.